Captain Marcus Reed stared at the massive ship that had appeared from nowhere. His colony vessel, the New Horizon, had been traveling through empty space just moments ago. Now they faced something that defied everything he knew about physics. The alien ship stretched for miles. Its surface gleamed like liquid metal, covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Strange lights pulsed along its hull in rhythms that made Marcus feel dizzy. He had commanded ships for 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Captain, they're scanning us," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. Her voice shook slightly. "The scanners are picking up energy signatures we don't recognize." Marcus gripped his command chair. Behind him, the bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. The New Horizon carried 15,000 colonists bound for Kepler 442b. Families, children, scientists, farmers, all hoping for a new life among the stars. Now they faced the unknown. "Any response to our communication attempts?" Marcus asked. "Nothing on standard frequencies," Torres replied. "Wait, Captain, I'm receiving something now. It's not radio waves. The signal is going directly into my head." Other crew members began nodding, their eyes growing wide. Marcus felt it too. A voice speaking inside his mind without using his ears. The words formed clearly, though the accent was strange and cold. "Primitive vessel, you will comply with boarding procedures. Resistance is futile and will result in destruction of your craft. Prepare for neural compliance processing." Marcus stood up straighter. Years of military training kicked in. Whatever these aliens wanted, he wouldn't let them harm innocent people. "This is Captain Marcus Reed of the human colony ship New Horizon. State your intentions and identify yourselves." The mental voice returned, carrying what sounded like amusement. "I am Overseer Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species designation is unknown to our records. You will be processed according to standard protocols. Neural dampeners will be installed to ensure proper behavior." "We're peaceful colonists," Marcus said aloud, hoping the aliens could hear him. "We mean no harm to anyone. Your intentions are irrelevant. Your compliance is required." The alien ship moved closer. Up close, Marcus could see it was even larger than he had thought. Sections of its hull began to glow, and he felt a strange, tugging sensation in his mind. Around the bridge, crew members began to sway on their feet. "Captain," Torres called out, "I'm feeling strange, like something is pushing into my thoughts." Marcus felt it too. A pressure building behind his eyes, making his thoughts feel fuzzy. He tried to focus, but it became harder with each passing second. "All hands, prepare for emergency procedures. Get the colonists to the shelters." But even as he gave the orders, Marcus knew they were too late. The alien technology was already affecting his crew. One by one, they stopped their frantic activity and stood still. Their faces became blank, their eyes distant. Bright lights began streaming from the alien vessel. The lights passed right through the New Horizon's hull as if it wasn't there. Marcus watched in horror as the beams touched his crew members. Where the light touched them, their expressions became even more vacant. "No," Marcus whispered, fighting against the growing pressure in his head. "I won't let you hurt them." But his resistance was fading fast. The alien presence in his mind grew stronger, pushing down his will to fight. He could feel his thoughts becoming simpler, his emotions flattening out. The urge to resist disappeared, like smoke in the wind. Within minutes, the entire bridge crew stood motionless. Their eyes stared ahead without seeing. Marcus found himself standing at attention, his mind clear but strangely calm. The anger and fear he had felt just moments ago seemed unimportant now. Overseer Kethvar materialized on the bridge. The alien was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. He wore robes that seemed to shift color as he moved. In one hand, he carried a device that hummed with soft energy. "Another successful acquisition," Kethvar said to himself, making notes on his device. Neural patterns show typical resistance followed by compliance, standard humanoid configuration, suitable for labor assignments. He walked among the crew, examining them like a farmer checking livestock. When he reached Marcus, he paused. "You are the leader?" "Yes, Overseer." Marcus heard himself say. The words came out automatically. Part of his mind screamed in protest, but that part felt very far away. Good. You will help process the others. Your species shows adequate physical development for mining operations. The Empire always needs workers for the deep excavations. Kethvar tapped his device, and Marcus felt new thoughts flowing into his mind. Procedures for organizing humans into work groups, safety protocols for mining equipment, dietary requirements and sleep schedules. All of it felt as natural as breathing. The neural dampeners are functioning perfectly, Kethvar noted. Aggressive impulses suppressed, independent thought limited to operational requirements. Another species joins the Empire's workforce. Through the ship's viewports, Marcus could see similar lights playing over other sections of the New Horizon. In the passenger areas, 15,000 colonists were receiving the same treatment. Families stood together in perfect silence. Children who should have been crying stood still as statues. Scientists and engineers who had spent years planning for their new world now waited patiently for new orders. Kethvar activated a communication device. Command, this is Overseer Kethvar reporting completion of acquisition operation. Species designation, human. Population captured, 15,000 individuals. Neural compliance, 100%. Requesting assignment of work details. A voice responded from the device. Acknowledged, Overseer. Transport Group 7 to Mining World Xerion 4. Group 8 to Industrial Complex Beta Prime. Remainder to agricultural stations in Sector 12. Standard processing complete. Understood, Command. Another successful day for the Empire. Kethvar looked around the bridge with satisfaction. In over 2 centuries of service, he had processed more than 40 different species. Each one had followed the same pattern: initial resistance, then complete surrender to Zephyrian neural technology. The humans had been no different. As the alien ship began tractoring the New Horizon toward processing stations, Marcus stood with his crew in perfect silence. Deep in his mind, a tiny part of him still fought against the neural controls. But that part was locked away, buried under layers of artificial calm. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds using the same methods. Their neural dampeners had never failed to break the will of any species. Why should humans be any different? Kethvar began preparations for transport. The humans would be sorted by physical capability and assigned to various work sites across Zephyrian space. The process was efficient and had worked the same way for thousands of years. Within hours, the New Horizon was docked at Processing Station Alpha. Zephyrian technicians swarmed aboard, cataloging the new slaves and preparing them for transport. The colonists walked in orderly lines, their dreams of a new world replaced by simple obedience. Marcus found himself assigned to lead a mining crew on a distant world. As he was loaded onto a transport ship with 99 other humans, he felt nothing but acceptance. The neural dampeners had done their work perfectly, or so it seemed. The Zephyrians had conquered many species, but they had never encountered one quite like humanity. They had no way of knowing that human brains were different, shaped by millions of years of evolution, warfare, and survival against impossible odds. As the transport ships carried their human cargo toward the mining worlds, Overseer Kethvar filed his final report. Another successful acquisition. Another species broken and controlled. He had no idea that he had just made the biggest mistake in the Empire's long history. 6 months had passed since the humans arrived at mining station Xerion 4. The facility stretched deep into the planet's crust, extracting rare minerals that powered Zephyrian weapons and ships. Captain Marcus Reed, now designated as mining supervisor, 7 Alpha, led his crew through the daily routines without question. The work was hard but manageable. The humans operated massive drilling machines and transport vehicles with the same quiet efficiency they showed in everything else. Their Zephyrian overseers were pleased with the results. Humans proved to be excellent workers, strong, adaptable, and completely obedient. Marcus stood in Tunnel Section 12, watching his crew operate a new deep core drill. The machine bit into rock formations that had formed billions of years ago. Strange crystals sparkled in the exposed stone, and the air hummed with energy from the mineral deposits. Drill deeper, Marcus told his crew member, Sarah Chen. She had been a Marine lieutenant on the New Horizon. Now she operated heavy machinery with the same precision she had once used on weapons. Sarah nodded and adjusted the controls. The drill pushed further down, sending vibrations through the tunnel floor. As it worked, something unexpected happened. The lights in the tunnel began to flicker. "Supervisor," called out Tom Wilson, another former Marine. "The drilling equipment is showing power fluctuations." Marcus walked over to check the readings. The energy levels were jumping wildly. "Continue drilling. Report fluctuations to maintenance later." But the fluctuations got worse. The drilling machine began making strange noises. Its control panel sparked and went dark for several seconds before coming back online. The overhead lights dimmed and brightened in random patterns. Sarah stepped back from the drill controls, blinking rapidly. For just a moment, her face showed confusion instead of the usual blank calm. "Sir, something feels wrong." The words surprised both of them. Since the neural dampeners had been installed, none of the humans had expressed personal feelings. They simply worked, ate, and slept, according to their programming. "Explain," Marcus said, though he felt a strange stirring in his own mind. "I don't know," Sarah replied, pressing a hand to her forehead. "My head hurts. The drilling. It's making me think about things I haven't thought about in months." Tom Wilson moved closer. "I feel it too, like something pressing against my thoughts, but from the inside this time." Marcus looked around the tunnel. The energy readings from the exposed minerals were off the charts. The electromagnetic fields were stronger than anything they had encountered before, and something was happening to the humans exposed to it. Over the next few days, the effects spread. The crew working in the deep tunnels began showing signs of change. They still performed their duties, but small things were different. A worker might pause and look around as if seeing the place for the first time. Another might ask questions that went beyond simple work requirements. Sarah was the first to remember her past clearly. She was checking mineral samples when memories flooded back. Earth, the colony mission, the capture, the feeling of her mind being locked away. The shock of it made her stumble. "I remember," she whispered to herself. "I remember who I was." She looked around carefully. The Zephyrian overseers were busy in other sections. The tunnel was filled with the electromagnetic interference that seemed to weaken whatever controlled their minds. Sarah moved closer to Marcus. "Captain," she said quietly, "can you hear me? Really hear me?" Marcus turned toward her. For a moment, his eyes were the same blank stare as always. Then something shifted. His expression became alert and aware. "Sarah? Lieutenant Chen?" "Yes, sir. I think we're waking up." Over the following weeks, more humans in the deep mining sections began to recover their memories and personalities. But they were smart enough to hide it. They had learned to act the same as before when the overseers were watching. During breaks and shift changes, they found ways to communicate. The awakened humans discovered they weren't alone. Tom Wilson made contact with other mining crews. A woman named Dr. Patricia Hayes, who had been the New Horizons' chief scientist, had awakened in a different tunnel system. Slowly, carefully, they built a network of aware humans throughout the facility. They learned disturbing things about their situation. The minerals they were mining were used to build weapons for the Zephyrian military, the same weapons that would be used to conquer other worlds and enslave other species. They were being forced to help the Empire expand its reach across the galaxy. Dr. Hayes made the most important discovery. While studying the mineral samples during her official duties, she realized what was happening. The electromagnetic fields from these deposits are interfering with our neural implants, she explained during a secret meeting. The dampeners weren't designed to handle this kind of energy. "So we're actually breaking free?" Sarah asked. "More than that," Hayes replied. "I think our brains are adapting, learning to work around the controls. I've never seen anything like it in any other species." Marcus felt a mixture of hope and anger building in his chest, emotions he hadn't experienced in months. "How many of us are awake?" Maybe 200 so far, Tom reported. All in the deep sections where the interference is strongest, but Captain, we have to be careful. If the Zephyrians find out, they all knew what would happen. The aliens would either install stronger controls or simply eliminate the humans, who couldn't be properly controlled. But Sarah had been thinking about something else. Sir, what about the other humans? The ones sent to different facilities? Marcus nodded grimly. 15,000 people scattered across Zephyrian space. If the neural controls are weakening here, they might be weakening elsewhere too. The group began planning. They needed to find ways to communicate with other human groups. They needed to understand more about how the neural dampeners worked. Most importantly, they needed to stay hidden while they figured out what to do next. Dr. Hayes volunteered for the most dangerous job. Using her access to the facility's computer systems, she began researching Zephyrian technology and Imperial records. What she found made her sick with rage. Humanity wasn't the first species to be enslaved. The Zephyrians had been doing this for thousands of years. Dozens of intelligent races had been conquered and turned into workers. The Empire used each enslaved species to help conquer the next one. They're not just keeping us as slaves, Hayes reported to the group. They're turning us into tools to enslave others. Every weapon we help build, every facility we construct, it all gets used to expand their empire. Sarah clenched her fists. The neural dampeners had suppressed her anger for months, but now it came rushing back with interest. How many species have they destroyed this way? At least 40, that I can find records of, maybe more. The awakened humans looked at each other with growing determination. They weren't just prisoners. They were unwilling accomplices in galactic oppression. Every day they worked was another day they helped the Empire grow stronger. We have to stop this, Marcus said. Not just for us, but for every species they plan to conquer next. But how? Tom asked. We're just a few hundred people on one mining world. They have an entire empire. Sarah smiled for the first time in months. It wasn't a pleasant smile. We're not just any people, we're humans. And humans don't stay down when you hit them. They get back up and hit harder. As the group dispersed back to their duties, each member carried new purpose. They would continue to wake up more humans. They would learn everything they could about Zephyrian technology. And somehow they would find a way to strike back. The Zephyrians thought they had broken humanity's spirit. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. In the deepest tunnels of Zerion 4, surrounded by the very minerals that were setting them free, the humans began to plan their revenge. The Empire had made many enemies over the millennia, but they had never faced an enemy quite like this. They had never faced humans who remembered what freedom felt like. Dr. Patricia Hayes crouched in the darkest corner of Storage Bay 7, her fingers flying over a stolen data pad. Around her, the awakened humans had gathered for their most dangerous meeting yet. 3 months had passed since the first awakenings, and their secret network had grown to over 800 people across the mining facility. I've found something, Hayes whispered, her voice tight with excitement and horror. The Imperial records go back over 10,000 years. The Zephyrians have perfected this system of conquest. Marcus leaned closer to see the data. Show us. Hayes activated a holographic display that showed star maps spanning half the galaxy. Dozens of worlds were marked in red. Each mark represents a species that was conquered and enslaved. The Dreknari were first, a warrior race that now builds Zephyrian battle fleets. The Veltans create their communication networks. The Karathi serve as enforcers and guards. Sarah studied the pattern. They use each species against the next ones. Exactly. The neural dampeners don't just make slaves, they make weapons. Every conquered race becomes part of the machine that conquers others. Hayes scrolled through more data. But I found something else. Something the Zephyrians don't know about us. She pulled up brain scan data that made the group gasp. The neural patterns were unlike anything they had seen before. These are human brain scans taken when we were first captured, Hayes explained, and these are scans from awakened humans taken 3 weeks ago. The difference was striking. The newer scans showed massive changes in neural pathways. Tom Wilson stared at the data. What does it mean? It means we're evolving, Hayes said. Not physically, but mentally. Our brains are actually rewiring themselves to work around the neural controls. I've never seen anything like it in the records of other species. Marcus felt a chill of excitement. Are you saying we're immune to their technology? Not immune, but resistant, and getting more resistant every day. The electromagnetic interference from the mining operations helped trigger the process, but our brains are doing most of the work themselves. Hayes pulled up more data. I managed to hack into the central processing records. There are other human groups scattered across 17 star systems. Mining operations, construction projects, agricultural stations. If the same awakening process is happening elsewhere, how many humans total? Sarah asked. Nearly 15,000 from our ship alone. But Marcus, there's more. The records show other human ships were captured over the past year. Small scouting, vessels, research ships, even some military patrols. There could be 25,000 humans in Zephyrian space. The group exchanged glances. 25,000 awakening humans across multiple star systems could be a significant force. But Hayes wasn't finished. I also found something about their next target. She activated another display showing Earth's solar system. They're planning a major operation, full conquest of our home system. Over 8 billion people. The silence that followed was broken by Sarah's quiet curse. When? The invasion fleet is being assembled now. They estimate 6 months to complete preparations. Marcus felt rage building in his chest, pure, clean anger that the neural dampeners couldn't touch. We have to warn Earth. How? Tom asked. We're trapped on a mining world in the middle of their empire. But Hayes had been thinking about this. I made contact with someone, another prisoner, but not human. She gestured toward the shadows at the back of the storage bay. A figure stepped forward, tall, thin, with the same blue skin as their captors. The humans tensed, ready to fight, but Hayes held up a hand. This is Veltar. She's a Zephyrian scientist, and she wants to help us. The alien woman moved slowly, her hands visible and empty. When she spoke, her voice carried none of the cold arrogance they had heard from other Zephyrians. Instead, she sounded tired and ashamed. I have studied neural control technology for 60 years, Veltar said. I helped design the current generation of dampeners. I believed we were bringing order to the galaxy. What changed your mind? Marcus asked, his hand still near the mining tool he could use as a weapon. The children, Veltar replied simply. I saw what we did to the children of conquered species. We told ourselves we were preventing war, bringing peace, but we were destroying everything that makes life worth living. Sarah stepped forward. Why should we trust you? Because I can give you something no other species has ever had. Veltar activated her own datapad. Complete technical specifications for neural dampener technology, manufacturing locations, central control systems, everything. The humans stared at the data. It was more detailed than anything Hayes had been able to steal. There's more, Veltar continued. I'm not the only Zephyrian who questions what we've become. There are others, scientists, technicians, even some military officers. We've been watching your species with great interest. Why? Marcus asked. Because you're the first to show this level of resistance. Other species eventually accept their fate completely. Even when the dampeners weaken, they don't fight back. But humans... Veltar paused. Humans get angry. You don't just want freedom, you want justice. Hayes looked at the technical data with growing excitement. With this information, we could disable the neural controls on other species, free the entire slave population. That's exactly what I'm hoping for, Veltar said. But it won't be easy. The control systems are heavily guarded. The manufacturing facilities are protected by automated defenses. And if the High Command realizes what's happening, they'll start killing slaves rather than risk losing control, Marcus finished. Yes, we would have one chance. It would have to be coordinated across multiple systems simultaneously. Sarah studied the star charts showing human prisoner locations. Our people are spread across 17 systems. Even if they're all awakening like us, how do we coordinate something that big? Veltar smiled. The first time any of them had seen a Zephyrian show genuine emotion. The same way your species has always communicated across vast distances, you'll find a way. Over the next few weeks, the group worked frantically to develop a plan. Hayes and Veltar analyzed the technical data, looking for weaknesses in the Zephyrian systems. Marcus and Sarah organized the awakened humans into action teams. Tom coordinated with other human groups using hidden communication methods they developed. They discovered that Veltar was right. The awakening was happening everywhere humans were imprisoned. The electromagnetic interference from various industrial operations was triggering the same neural adaptation across multiple worlds. Groups of aware humans were forming in mining colonies, construction sites, and agricultural stations throughout Zephyrian space. But they also learned something terrifying. The humans weren't just building weapons and facilities. They were being used to construct the very ships that would invade Earth. Every day they worked was another day closer to their homeworld's destruction. "We're not just slaves," Marcus told the group during one meeting. "We're being forced to help them destroy our own species." "Then we stop helping them," Sarah said firmly. "And we start hurting them instead." Hayes looked up from her technical analysis. "I think I know how. But it's going to require us to get off this world and reach other human groups directly." "How do we escape from a heavily guarded mining facility?" Tom asked. Veltar activated another display. "You don't escape. You liberate it. And then you use their own ships to reach the other facilities." The plan that emerged was ambitious beyond anything the humans had imagined. They would simultaneously capture multiple facilities, free other enslaved species, and turn the Empire's own infrastructure against itself. It would require precise timing, complete commitment, and enormous risk. "If we fail," Marcus warned, "they'll hunt down every human in the galaxy." "If we don't try," Sarah replied, "Earth dies in 6 months." As the group prepared to disperse, Veltar made one final revelation. "There's something else you should know about your species. The neural resistance you're showing. It's not just random adaptation." "What do you mean?" Hayes asked. "Your evolutionary history. Millions of years of warfare, survival, competition. Your brains developed differently from other species. You're literally evolved to resist control and fight back against oppression." Marcus felt a grim smile cross his face. "So you picked the wrong species to enslave?" "Yes," Veltar agreed. "The Empire has made many mistakes over the millennia, but enslaving humanity may be the last mistake they ever make." As the humans returned to their duties, each carried new knowledge and purpose. They weren't just prisoners anymore. They were a weapon pointed at the heart of an empire that had oppressed the galaxy for thousands of years. The Zephyrians thought they were using humans to build their conquest fleet. They had no idea they were actually building their own destruction. The rebellion began at exactly 0300 hours across 17 star systems, timed to the second using the Zephyrians' own communication networks. On mining station Zerion 4, Marcus Reed stood in the central control room, watching the countdown on "A stolen data pad reached 0. Now," he whispered into his communication device. Across the facility, 800 awakened humans moved into action with military precision. Sarah Chen and her team struck the main power plant, using modified mining equipment to overload the energy grid. The facility's lights flickered and died, replaced by the red glow of emergency systems. In the guard barracks, Tom Wilson led a group of former Marines through corridors they had memorized during months of careful planning. The Zephyrian guards were caught completely off guard. Their neural control technology had worked perfectly for thousands of years. The possibility of a coordinated slave uprising had never occurred to them. "Sector 7 secured," Tom reported over their improvised communication network. "Guards neutralized, weapons captured." Similar reports came in from across the facility. The humans moved like a single organism, each team knowing exactly what to do and when to do it. Years of military training, suppressed but not erased by the neural dampeners, came flooding back as they reclaimed their freedom. Dr. Hayes and Veltar worked frantically in the main computer center, uploading a virus that would spread through the Zephyrian network and disable neural dampeners across multiple worlds. The virus was based on human computer programming merged with Veltar's knowledge of Zephyrian systems, a combination no one in the Empire had ever seen before. "Upload complete," Hayes announced. "The liberation signal is spreading through their communication grid." Marcus moved through the facility, coordinating the liberation of other enslaved species. The mining station held not just humans, but members of dozens of other races, all controlled by the same neural technology. As the dampeners failed, these beings began to remember who they had been before their enslavement. A group of tall, four-armed creatures called Draknari began roaring with fury as their memories returned. The bird-like Veltans spread their wings and screeched in languages that had been silent for decades. Everywhere, the sound of awakening filled the air, but not all the freed beings were immediately grateful. Some had been enslaved so long they feared the return of their emotions. Others attacked anything nearby in their confusion and rage. The humans found themselves not just fighting their captors, but managing a complex liberation of traumatized survivors. "Easy," Sarah called out to a group of reptilian Karathi who were thrashing around in panic. "You're free now. We're all free." Slowly, the other species began to understand. The humans weren't new captors. They were liberators. As word spread through the facility, former enemies began working together to secure their freedom. The Zephyrian response was swift but confused. Overseer Kethavar, the same alien who had originally captured the humans, found himself trapped in his command center as the facility fell around him. He activated emergency protocols, calling for military support from the nearest Imperial base. "This is impossible," he muttered, staring at reports coming in from across his sector. "Neural dampeners don't fail. They never fail." But the reports kept coming. Mining Station Beta 7, complete slave uprising. Agricultural Complex Gamma 12, all workers, in rebellion. Industrial Facility Delta Prime captured by liberated prisoners. 17 facilities across multiple star systems, all falling within hours of each other. Marcus found Kethvar in the command center, surrounded by the remnants of his guard force. The overseer looked at the human with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "You," Kethvar said. "I processed you myself. The neural compliance was perfect." "Your technology works fine on most species," Marcus replied, his voice cold as space. "But you made one mistake. You tried to break humans. Impossible. No species can resist indefinitely. The dampeners suppress all aggressive impulses." Marcus smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "That's where you're wrong. You didn't suppress our aggression. You just made us better at hiding it. And now we've had months to plan exactly what we're going to do to you." The remaining guards raised their weapons, but they were surrounded by dozens of freed slaves. Draknari, Veltans, Korathi, and others who had suffered under Zephyrian rule for generations. The guards' energy weapons were no match for the fury of the liberated. Within hours, Mining Station Zarion 4 was completely under human control. But this was just the beginning. Using the facility's communication equipment, Marcus established contact with other human groups across the galaxy. Phoenix Base to all stations. He transmitted using the code names they had developed. Primary objective secured. Phase 2 is go. Across space, similar scenes played out on world after world. Human construction crews turned their tools into weapons and seized control of shipyards where they had been forced to build invasion fleets. Agricultural workers liberated food production facilities that fed the Zephyrian military. Every facility that had used human labor became a point of rebellion. But the humans didn't stop with their own liberation. Everywhere they went, they freed other enslaved species and taught them how to disable the neural controls. The liberation virus spread through Zephyrian networks faster than the Empire could contain it. On Industrial Complex Beta Prime, a human engineer named David Park led a team that captured an entire fleet of Zephyrian warships. The ships had been built by enslaved workers who knew every system, every weakness, every way to turn the vessels against their former masters. "This is just the beginning," Park transmitted to the growing network of liberated facilities. We're not just escaping, we're taking everything they used to oppress us. The Zephyrian High Command finally began to understand the scope of the disaster. Emergency sessions were called. Fleets were redirected from conquest missions to deal with the spreading rebellions. But they faced a problem no Zephyrian strategist had ever considered. What do you do when your entire infrastructure turns against you? How many facilities have we lost? Demanded High Commander Zethkol during an emergency meeting. 47 confirmed, with more going dark every hour, reported his aide. The humans are coordinating across multiple systems. They're using our own communication networks against us. Impossible. They're slaves, broken, controlled, obedient. Not anymore, sir. Intelligence reports indicate complete neural dampener, failure across human populations. They're not just rebelling, they're liberating other species and organizing them into fighting forces. Zethkol studied tactical displays showing the spreading rebellion. Red markers indicated lost facilities, yellow ones showed facilities under attack, and green ones were still under Imperial control. The amount of red was growing by the hour. Deploy the 9th Fleet to recapture mining station Zerion 4, he ordered. Make an example of these humans. Show the other species what happens to rebels. But when the 9th Fleet arrived at Zerion 4, they found something unprecedented. The mining station had been converted into a fortress, defended by a mixed force of liberated species working together with military precision. The space around the facility buzzed with captured Zephyrian ships now operated by former slaves. The battle was fierce but brief. The Imperial fleet was designed to fight other organized militaries, not the desperate fury of beings fighting for their freedom. Ships that the Zephyrians had built using slave labor turned their own weapons against Imperial vessels. The tactical knowledge gained from months of forced construction work allowed the rebels to exploit weaknesses in Zephyrian ship design. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Free Fleet," came a transmission from one of the captured ships. Sarah had promoted herself after successfully capturing a Zephyrian cruiser with a team of former Marines. "Surrender now, and you'll be treated according to galactic law. Continue fighting and we'll show you the same mercy you showed our people." The 9th Fleet commander chose to retreat. It was the first time in Zephyrian history that an Imperial fleet had fled from former slaves. But the humans weren't finished. Using their captured ships and facilities, they began broadcasting across the galaxy. The message went out on every frequency, in every language, to every world that had ever been conquered by the Empire. "This is Captain Marcus Reed of the Human Liberation Forces," the transmission began. "For thousands of years, the Zephyrian Empire has enslaved your people and ours. They told us resistance was futile. They were wrong." The broadcast included detailed technical specifications for disabling neural dampeners, tactical information about Zephyrian weaknesses, and coordinates for rally points where liberated species could gather. Most importantly, it included proof that the supposedly invincible empire could be defeated. Across the galaxy, enslaved beings looked up from their work and felt something they hadn't experienced in generations: hope. The rebellion that had started with a few hundred awakened humans on a single mining world was now spreading to every corner of Zephyrian space. Species that had been enslaved for millennia were remembering what freedom felt like, and they were getting angry. The empire that had seemed unstoppable for 10,000 years was about to learn what happened when you push beings too far. They had created the perfect conditions for their own destruction, a galaxy full of... 3 months after the first uprising, the Zephyrian Empire was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. What had started as scattered rebellions had become a galactic revolution. On the former imperial capital of Zephyr Prime, Marcus Reed stood before the ruins of the High Command building, watching as the last symbols of 10,000 years of oppression were torn down. The city around him buzzed with activity, but it was different now. Where once only Zephyrians had walked the streets as free beings, now dozens of species moved freely among the towering spires. Draknari worked alongside Veltons to restore damaged buildings. Karathian humans collaborated on new communication networks. The enslaved had become the builders of a new galaxy. "Final casualty reports, Captain," Sarah Chen said, approaching with a datapad. She still called him Captain. even though both of them now held ranks in the provisional government that was forming from the ashes of the Empire. Marcus reviewed the numbers. The liberation had not been without cost. Thousands had died in the fighting as Imperial forces tried desperately to maintain control. But the alternative would have been the extinction of entire species. Could have been worse. Much worse, Sarah agreed. The Zephyrians fought hardest when they realized we weren't going to simply execute them all. That had been one of the most crucial decisions of the revolution. When the tide turned and Imperial forces began surrendering en masse, many of the liberated species had called for complete extermination of their former oppressors. The fury of beings freed after generations of slavery was understandable. But Marcus and the other human leaders had argued for a different approach. Revenge would make us no better than them, Marcus had told the War Council. But justice, real justice, that's something else entirely. The justice they implemented was more terrifying to the Zephyrians than execution would have been. Using modified versions of their own neural technology, the worst war criminals were fitted with devices that let them experience exactly what their victims had felt. Overseer Kethvar now worked in a reconstruction crew, his neural patterns adjusted so that he felt the full emotional weight of every family he had torn apart, every life he had destroyed. The irony was not lost on anyone. The technology designed to create perfect slaves was now being used to create perfect understanding of the harm that slavery caused. The war crimes tribunals are finishing up, Sarah reported. Most of the Imperial leadership will spend the rest of their lives in rehabilitation programs. The scientists and engineers who cooperated, like Veltar, are being given positions in the new government. Marcus nodded. Veltar had become one of the most important figures in the transition, helping to design systems that would prevent any future return to slavery. Her knowledge of Zephyrian technology, combined with human insights about resistance and freedom, was creating innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. What about the invasion fleet? Marcus asked. Completely disabled. The ships that were being built to attack Earth are now being converted into exploration and colonization vessels. We're sending them back to human space with messages of what happened here. The planned invasion of Earth had been stopped before it could begin. When the rebellion started, every facility involved in building the invasion fleet had been liberated. The massive armada that was supposed to enslave humanity's homeworld instead became a symbol of liberation. Ships built by slaves turned into vehicles of freedom. But perhaps the most important change was happening in the minds of the liberated beings themselves. For the first time in millennia, dozens of species were working together as equals rather than as slaves and masters. The Galactic Council that was forming looked nothing like the old Empire. The Draknari delegation wants to discuss military cooperation agreements, Sarah continued. The Veltans are offering to share their communication technology freely with all species. Even some of the smaller groups are contributing. The Rillan have offered to establish trade networks that don't depend on slave labor. Marcus walked to the window of what had once been the High Command's war room. Below, in the plaza where Zephyrian ceremonies had once celebrated new conquests, representatives from 60 different species were meeting to design a new form of government. It was chaotic, loud, and often frustrating, but it was also free. Any word from the exploration teams? He asked. They're finding more than we expected. Hidden facilities, secret research stations, even some worlds that had managed to resist conquest for centuries. The Empire was bigger than we knew, but also more fragile. Once the neural control networks went down, everything fell apart quickly. The speed of the collapse had surprised everyone. The Zephyrian Empire had seemed invincible, but it had a fatal weakness. It depended entirely on its ability to control other beings. When that control failed, there was nothing left to hold the system together. A communication chime interrupted their conversation. Tom Wilson's face appeared on the holographic display, transmitted from a ship somewhere in the Outer Rim territories. Marcus, we found something you need to see, Tom said without preamble. His expression was grim. What is it? Remember those missing exploration ships from human space? The ones that disappeared before our colony vessel was captured? We found them. All of them. Marcus felt a chill. Survivors? Oh, there are survivors. All right, about 3,000 humans scattered across a dozen hidden facilities, but Marcus... Tom paused. These people have been enslaved for over 3 years. Their neural dampeners are different. Older, more powerful. They're not awakening like we did. The implications hit Marcus immediately. If there were human populations that couldn't break free from neural control, they would need active liberation. And if the Zephyrians had been experimenting with different control methods for years, there might be other hidden populations across the galaxy. We're organizing rescue operations, Tom continued. But we're going to need the new fleet for this. Some of these facilities are heavily defended. Do whatever it takes, Marcus replied. We don't leave anyone behind. After Tom signed off, Marcus and Sarah stood in silence for a moment. The revolution was far from over. There would be years of work ahead, finding hidden slave populations, rebuilding shattered worlds, establishing new forms of government that prevented future tyranny. Do you think we did the right thing? Sarah asked quietly. Sometimes I wonder if we should have just focused on escaping, getting back to Earth. Marcus looked out at the plaza below, where beings from across the galaxy were arguing, laughing, and planning together. It was messy and imperfect, but it was also something that had never existed before, a truly free galactic community. The Zephyrians enslaved 47 species over 10,000 years, he said finally. If we had just escaped, they would have enslaved 47 more over the next 10,000, maybe including Earth eventually. So we saved the galaxy, Marcus chuckled. We started saving it, the real work is just beginning. A year later, Marcus stood in a very different place, the bridge of a human exploration ship heading back toward Earth. The Free Galactic Alliance had voted to establish formal contact with humanity's homeworld, and Marcus had been chosen to lead the delegation. The ship around him was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Zephyrian technology merged with human innovation and contributions from dozens of other species. It was faster and more advanced than anything any single race had, built alone. His crew was equally diverse. Sarah served as his first officer while Veltar headed the science division. Former slaves from across the galaxy worked together with ex-Imperial personnel who had joined the new order. Even a few Zephyrians served in the crew, beings who had proven their commitment to the new principles of freedom and cooperation. Approaching the Sol system, reported the navigation officer, a four-armed Draknari named Kextar. Earth Defense Forces are hailing us. Marcus smiled as he opened the communication channel. After 3 years away, he was finally going home. But he wasn't, returning as the same person who had left. None of them were. Earth Defense Command, this is Captain Marcus Reed of the Free Alliance vessel New Dawn, requesting permission to approach Earth. The response came quickly, filled with shock and joy. Marcus Reed, this is General Patricia Hayes, Patricia's daughter. We thought you were dead. The New Horizon disappeared 3 years ago. Marcus looked at Dr. Hayes, who was wiping tears from her eyes. Tell them we have quite a story to share, General, and we bring friends. As the ship approached Earth, Marcus reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy that had once been ruled by fear was slowly learning to be governed by hope. It wouldn't be perfect. There would be conflicts, disagreements, and challenges ahead. But, for the first time in 10,000 years, beings across the galaxy were free to choose their own destinies. The neural dampeners that had once controlled millions now sat in museums as reminders of what happened when any group tried to control others completely. The Zephyrian Empire had thought they could control humans, turn them into perfect slaves, like all the others. Instead, they had awakened something that spread across the galaxy like wildfire, the unbreakable human belief that freedom was worth any price. As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Marcus allowed himself a moment.